Hello, this is Dave Delaney. I'll be talking today about our project, the use of Data Mule Unmanned Aircraft System to remotely download ground-based sensor data on military lands. I'd like to recognize my other co-authors here, shown on this slide, and also like to recognize ESTCP for funding this project. So this is the project team here. We have the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who I work for. We have the Navy, Mission Mule, which is a contracting company that whose technology we're demonstrating as part of this project. Luke Air Force Base with the 56 Range Management Office. And then we have the Naval Base Ventura County. So there's provide you a little background for this. What we're trying to look for and demonstrate and validate as part of this project is looking for an effective way for DoD managers to be able to download information from ground sensors. Currently, the standard practice is for someone to go out into the field, to drive out to a location, walk to a site, and download the data from that ground sensor. Of course, that can be time-consuming, the cost associated with it, and then there's risk of personnel, especially in kind of remote areas where one person might be working on their own, and the personal risk aspects associated with that. Also, on some of these DoD installations, of course, you're dealing with military training exercises, so difficulty of getting down range to be able to get data and not being able to control that situation. So, and then inhospitable kind of field conditions, road conditions, and things that can make it difficult to get out to the site. So that can delay data acquisition and can lead to loss of data if if batteries run out or secure digital cards kind of fill up, those kind of things. So what we're looking at is trying to have a technology that can enhance the capability of DoD managers to be able to download this information in a timely fashion so they can integrate this information into their adaptive management practices. Looking for something that's going to be cost effective and efficient, and being able to do this, especially in remote areas with a lot of the very large military installations in the West. So what we're doing is proposing an alternative kind of cost-effective method, and we'll be doing, as part of this, comparing this technology I'll be talking about today to the traditional kind of boots on the ground method. So the goal of this project is kind of demonstrate and validate the effectiveness of this Data Mule drone system, and looking at trying to reduce the costs and increase the data access from this technology, and being able to maintain that quality that the resource managers are collecting and trying to ultimately integrate into their management programs. So we want to demonstrate this Data Mule UAS and show that it can be deployed and it can effectively download data from these remote ground-based systems. And for this, we're talking about camera traps specifically. And we want to validate the effectiveness of this, as I said before, in comparison to the ground-based method. So we have pictures here. We show the airframe that we use, just a bird's eye view Firefly Pro 6. Reason we were interested in this is it's an airframe that can hover as well as transition into forward flight, and it allows for an hour or so of flight. And for the installation that we were doing work, it was important to have a good amount of flight time on this to be able to try to visit multiple sites. The Data Mule payload shown in the center picture here. So this is the box that's attached to the bottom of the airframe, and it has a wireless communication between that payload and then the ground station, which is shown in the right picture here. So that right picture shows a communication box, and then a camera trap in the middle, and then a solar panel. And this was on San Nicolas Island, one of our study sites. So we have wireless communication between the payload that's being carried underneath the belly of the airframe, and then that ground station specifically. So I'll give you a little bit of background on the technology specifically and some of the novel features. So one of the major things, of course, is the automated downloading of this information. So you have your system that's integrated with your ground sensor and the communication between the ground station and your airframe specifically. And one important thing to mention about the airframe, we chose the bird's eye view just because it's kind of a test case. We thought it would do well for us in getting the hour of flight, as I mentioned. But any airframe is going to work. This is the technology we're really demonstrating. The airframe itself is just the vehicle that we used, the tool we used to demonstrate this. So we have that advanced wireless communication system, the multi-layering encryption to protect the data, and then again, just kind of being able to, one of the main things too is as part of the system is the automated upgrades and diagnostics. You want to understand how the system's working from a distance, be able to know that the system's working effectively. So if there are issues, you can get a timely update on that and be able to go out and fix systems as necessary. Another thing is the low power operation of this system that we're demonstrating here. Because again, if you're putting something out in the landscape, you don't want to have to go out and change batteries or those kind of things. If you can get it to run longer, it kind of lessens the time that you need to go out into the field. So what we want to show here on this figure, in this graphic, is just showing the airframe coming in when it's about 1.6 kilometers away from your ground station. Then they start having communication between the ground station and the airframe. It wakes up the system. It starts getting ready and prepared to transmit information. As the airframe gets over about 100 meters from the station, it starts loitering in a circular pattern within 100 meters or so, and then it starts downloading the information. And you can preset that based on how long, you might know how many camera images are there, so you can preset what you think it might be, or you can set whatever you want as part of the mission plan on this. Once it's downloaded all the information, it can continue on to another site or return to where it took off. So you have those determinations when you're going through the mission planning. So this is again mission planning execution. What we did as part of this, we are field testing this data mule system at a couple of locations, the BMGR East, which is the Barium Goldwater Range East, in 2019, which is kind of southwestern Arizona, and then Point Mugu, San Nicolas Island, which is in the Ventura County area, so Naval Base Ventura County, and that was this last year, 2020. And so again, the BMGR, and I'll talk a little bit more in slides for these in a second to tell you what the differences are. But we are looking at a desert environment and then looking at a coastal environment from the Barium Goldwater to the San Nicolas Island and Point Mugu. So looking at different environments and temperature regimes and all those sort of things. So mission planning, you have to establish your takeoff and landing zones. You want to develop your mission plan. The picture here is showing kind of a mission planner that we used. Develop where your waypoints are, where your loitering points are going to be over your ground stations, where you're taking terrain into account and making those determinations of how high you can fly the airframe over the ground, that sort of thing. One of the other things too with the airframe we tested was the vertical takeoff and landing capability, so that was part of it. And then the graphic on the right hand side, so once the airframe collects the data and then it lands, you're able to get into the system and actually see if it was successful or not. You're able to see kind of the diagnostics aspects. Did the systems communicate? Did they download the data? How much data was downloaded? You can tell if it was fully successful or if you got a portion of the data, and then you have an understanding of how many pictures you have left, and then how much time you might need to go back and do another flight to download that. So those diagnostics after the flight are very important to understand the success, or if there's other flights that need to take place. So this is the Barium Goldwater Range. On the right, on the left, you see a map of that in the southwestern part of the state, and then on the right is just another example of a ground station there with that communication box on top, and then you see the camera trap there. So we deployed 7 of these systems on that range. And we wanted to test it on a large installation under kind of harsh desert environment on a large military base. And then we conducted about 60 flights from May to November in 2019, about every 2 weeks or so. So for results for that, what I want to show here is, we were able to demonstrate with this system, of course, autonomous takeoff and landing. Another important part was the kind of autonomous navigation and mission aspects of this, being able to download the data. And this figure on the top here shows an example of a multiple flight where we took off from one location and were able to hit 2 sites during one flight. And so that's another advantage of this system. But again, it can be any drone system specifically that you can put this on. But it went out towards the right side of the screen here on that top image, loitered over that, download the information, and then went all the way over to the left side of the image, and then downloaded from second location, and then came back and landed. And so again, we were able to demonstrate long distance, kind of multiple waypoint missions from 3.3 to 12 kilometers. An important part of this in doing work on the military installation is we were able to test beyond visual line of sight, which most people aren't able to do on other lands. And so that's one of the advantages of doing a military base and having control over that airspace for our testing, which was at times when the military wasn't training, so on weekends and morning sessions and things. Another part that was important was testing the missions beyond telemetry range. So we were relying on our mission planner and the plan that we had put into place. And so we were also able to do some testing on that, which was very, very important, both of those aspects, visual, out of visual, beyond visual line of sight, and then beyond telemetry range. And some of these images here on the bottom just showing you the important thing on BMGR, they were using the camera traps to look at artificial watering sites and look at wildlife visiting, kind of get an understanding of monitoring of what kind of species of wildlife we're visiting. And the other pictures here, you see an example of a mountain lion and then a bighorn sheep. And then this last image is just showing kind of a loitering pattern that the airframes would fly. And then the site we did last year was on the Point Mugu, and what we were looking at there was Ridgeway rails, and in the center picture you can see a diagram here in blue that outlines the Point Mugu area. And then the other image here, we were looking at some floating platform stations. So this is where we had the communication station and the cameras. And so these were put out for the rails to nest on, so we'd put these out into the marsh. And then as part of our testing for this, we'd fly over and download data. The other thing we're kind of a basis of comparison here is we are testing, this site specifically, Point Mugu and St. Nicholas Island. Why we wanted to test here is that we're dealing with nesting colonies. And so during the nesting period, a biologist wouldn't be able to get in there and actually download the information. And so if the camera malfunctions or the data card fills up or something, you're not able to get in there. So that's what we wanted to test, is a system in these environments with these nesting colonies to be able to collect data effectively and show that the system works in these locations so that you can be collecting data during the nesting season while not bothering the birds specifically. So we deployed 6 stations on Point Mugu, and we conducted flights from May to January of 2020 to 2021. And so the results from that, we conducted 75 flights over 20 days over that period of time, about every 2 weeks. We had 6 stations we put out, but 4 that were active and we could collect data consistently from. We had 2 stations that we had to drop because there was a kind of high level of radio frequency interference. So that's something that needs to be taken into account when using this sort of technology, and try to adjust for that as best you can. We were able to download 15,000 photos, and ultimately we were able to show Data Mule was very successful in downloading information from the camera traps. We also were observing and looking into, are the flights causing any negative response by the shorebirds, and we did not see any negative effect relative to our flights. So these photos at the bottom kind of just show you some images inside those platforms and some of the species that we collected information on, and then just showing a takeoff and landing here at Point Mugu. So results, we had these 2 figures kind of show, these are important considerations when you're looking at the data, is how many images are you able to collect at these different stations, so number of images are being collected, but also looking at the download speeds, because that of course makes determinations of how long you need to leave the airframe kind of circling the area to be able to download information. And of course the download speed is going to vary based on various conditions, topography, the distance between the airframe and the ground station itself, and then again if there's radio interference and those kind of things. So these are important variables, of course, as part of the data collection and things to monitor as part of the process. And then we collected information at Point Mugu, I'm sorry, at St. Nicholas Island. This should be St. Nicholas Island here. So we put out 12 stations in February 2020, and this was looking at the nesting at Brandt's cormorants nesting colony. So again, we were testing this kind of a coastal environment again, and we conducted, because of COVID-19, we were limited in being able to get out in 2020. So we were only able to go out 1 day, get access in October. We were able to fly at 4 sites, and we're successful in collecting information. So here you see a Brandt cormorant, and you see a kind of a picture from one of the camera traps of a nesting site, and then just the island itself, St. Nicholas Island over here. So results from that, we had 8 stations that were active. Again, at the day that we did our flight, 2 were inactive, and then 2 that were toppled over, we believe by kind of California sea lions or elephant seals. Again, for this specific day, we had 1 flight day that we were able to collect information at 4 stations specifically. The other ones were collecting kind of camera trap data over that period of time, but we were not able to do flights at the majority, again, because of that limitation getting out to the island because of COVID-19 restrictions. We did have good download speeds for these, and we're able to collect over 2,000 images. And as you can see, there's the data station here in the middle picture that had been toppled. And then we did document some nest predation by gulls here. And so again, this is another important to test as part of what this technology can demonstrate, and what it can do is putting a system like this into a nesting colony where you can have assurances you can go in and collect information more frequently than you could if you were being restricted, again, from human activity during the nesting colony. So it allows you to collect data that you normally wouldn't be able to collect, which is an important component of this. And then the last thing is just I think, for the project itself, the main thing we were trying to do, and we'll be doing as part of this, is a comparison between this new technology and the effectiveness of this, and being able to collect information from ground sensors and then comparing it to your traditional way. And ultimately trying to give other tools to natural resource managers, especially on some of these large installations where access is limited, and giving them more effective data and things that they can incorporate into their adaptive management in a timely fashion. So that's ultimately what we are trying to demonstrate, and we believe the system did well in being able to do that and collect information on camera traps, with camera traps. Again, this system can work with things we demonstrated with camera traps, but there are other sensors that can be integrated into this system as well. And the main point too is we were demonstrating, again, the wireless communication and transfer of information between these, the ground station and the airframe with the payload. But as I mentioned before, the airframe itself, we tested what we did just as a tool, but it can work with any airframe. So that's important to keep in mind too. It's the technology and the data transfer is what we are demonstrating, and was effectively demonstrated as part of this project. And so this last slide is just showing the social media site for the Mission Mule, which is the company, again, that developed the technology itself. And then it shows some of the different ways you can get in touch with them, with the website and the Twitter and then LinkedIn. And then my name here at the bottom for the project POC, David Delaney. And I thank you very much for your time. And again, I wanted to thank my co-authors and thank ESTCP and the installation personnel and the installations themselves for logistics and support of the project. So thank you very much.